Welcome to Voice of Moses, where timeless Bible stories come alive with faith, power, and cinematic storytelling. Today, we bring you the story of a courageous queen, a hidden God, and a destiny that changed the world. This is the powerful journey of Esther. Esther wasn't born a queen. She was a young Jewish girl, an orphan, living far from home in a land called Persia. She had no royal family, no power, just a kind heart and strong faith. Her real name was Hadassah, but in Persia, they called her Esther. This is not a fairy tale. It's real history. God's name is never mentioned in this story, but His presence is everywhere. The ruler of Persia was King Xerxes. He ruled 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. To show off his power and riches, he threw a grand party that lasted 180 days. After that, he held another 7-day feast for the whole city of Susa. During the feast, the king called for his queen, Vashti, to come before the guests, but she refused. She lost her crown. But her decision opened the door for God's bigger plan. The king ordered a search for a new queen. Beautiful women were brought from every corner of the empire. One of them was Esther. She was raised by her older cousin Mordecai, who told her to hide the fact that she was Jewish. Esther entered the palace with grace and humility, and God gave her favor in the eyes of everyone who met her. When the king saw Esther, he was pleased with her. He placed the royal crown on her head and made her queen. The king didn't know her true identity, but God did. One day, Mordecai was sitting near the palace gate. He overheard 2 guards plotting to kill King Xerxes. Mordecai told Esther. Esther told the king. The plot was stopped, and the men were punished. The event was written in the royal record books, but the king quickly forgot about it. Then came Haman, a proud and wicked man. The king gave him a high position, above all other officials. Everyone was ordered to bow before Haman, but Mordecai refused. He would only bow to God. Haman was filled with rage. He didn't just want to punish Mordecai. He wanted to destroy all the Jewish people in the empire. Haman went to the king and said, "There are people in your kingdom who don't follow your laws. They are different." The king believed him and gave him permission to act. A law was written and sealed with the king's ring. On the 13th day of the 12th month, all Jews would be killed. The news spread quickly. The Jewish people were heartbroken. They cried, fasted, and wore sackcloth. No one knew what to do. Mordecai sent a message to Esther, "Go to the king. Beg him to save your people." But Esther was afraid. No one was allowed to go to the king without being invited. Anyone who did could be killed. And Esther hadn't been called in 30 days. Mordecai replied, "Don't think you'll be safe just because you're in the palace. Maybe you were made queen for such a time as this." Esther sent a message back. "Tell everyone to fast and pray for me for 3 days. Then I will go to the king. And if I die, I die." On the 3rd day, Esther put on her royal robes. She walked into the king's court, risking her life. King Xerxes saw her, and he raised his golden scepter. She was safe. Esther invited the king and Haman to a special banquet. Then she invited them to another banquet the next day. That night, the king couldn't sleep. He asked for the royal records to be read. They read the story of Mordecai saving his life. The king asked, "What reward did he get?" The servants replied, "Nothing." Just then, Haman came in, ready to ask the king for permission to hang Mordecai. But before he could speak, the king asked, "What should be done for the man the king wants to honor?" Haman thought the king meant him. So he said, "Give him royal clothes, a crown, and a parade through the city." The king said, "Great, do all that for Mordecai." Haman was shocked, but he had to honor the man he hated. At the second banquet, the king asked Esther, "What is your request?" She answered, "Please save my life and the lives of my people. We are about to be destroyed." The king was stunned. "Who would do this?" he asked. Esther pointed to Haman and said, "This wicked man." The king stood up in anger and left the room. Haman fell at Esther's feet, begging for his life. When the king came back and saw this, he shouted, "Will he harm the queen in my presence?" Haman was taken away and hanged on the gallows he had built for Mordecai. But there was still a problem. The law to kill the Jews was sealed with the king's ring. It couldn't be undone. So Mordecai, now a royal official, helped write a new law. The Jews were allowed to protect themselves. They could gather together and fight anyone who tried to hurt them. Now, they weren't helpless. They were protected by the king's command and by God's hand. The sun rose on the 13th day of the 12th month, the day that had once been marked for death. The deadly law still stood. But now, so did a second law, giving the Jews the right to fight back. Across all 127 provinces, from India to Ethiopia, Jewish families prepared. Fathers sharpened swords. Mothers cooked and prayed. Children clung to the words of their elders. God will deliver us. They were not trained soldiers. They had no army, but they had courage. They had unity, and most of all, they had God. In every city and village, Jewish people stood together, side by side. They had fasted. They had prayed. They were ready. When their enemies came, they did not run. They stood their ground. The battle was not for revenge. It was for survival. Across the land, the fear of Mordecai had spread. He was now second to the king. Many Persians, even officials, helped the Jews. Some joined them. Others were too afraid to fight them. In Susa, the capital, the battle was fierce. But the Jews fought bravely and
But courage never leaves them.
That day, they defeated 500 enemies. Esther asked the king for one more day to defend Susa. He agreed. The next day, they defeated 300 more enemies. Across the empire, the victory was great. 75,000 enemies were defeated. But the Jews took no treasure. They weren't fighting for gold. They were fighting for freedom and for their future. The day meant for death. God turned into a day of life. The streets filled with music and laughter. Families celebrated. Children danced. Tables overflowed with food. They named the day Purim to remember the casting of lots and how God turned the enemy's plan upside down. This became a festival of joy, not just to celebrate survival, but to honor the God who works behind the scenes, the God who never forgets, the God who always rescues at the right time. Every year, they would remember the courage of a queen, the faith of a people, and the unseen hand of heaven. Many people don't know this story. They miss how powerful it is. Even though God's name isn't spoken, He is in every part. The fall of Vashti, the rise of Esther, the sleepless night, the Golden Scepter, the twist of fate. This is not luck. This is God's plan. And Esther's words still echo today. If I perish, I perish. She stood alone, but she stood with God. And that changed everything. So what about you? Maybe you're facing something scary. Maybe you feel small, unsure, or afraid. But maybe you were chosen for such a time as this. If this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe to Voice of Moses for more powerful Bible stories. And don't forget to click the bell icon so you never miss a new episode. Because here at Voice of Moses, we don't just tell stories. We bring God's Word to life.